Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Meg Swayze. She is going to explain how the UX competitive analysis works, or UX UI competitive analysis works. But before she does that, I'm going to ask her just to kind of briefly introduce herself. So, Meg, if you would introduce yourself and tell just a little bit about you, what a little bit about your background and how you got into UX UI, please.
That is wonderful. Well, thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me today. My name is Meg Swayze, and I came into this a little bit of a different path. But what I find with UX UI is that happens a lot. And I come with a background in studio art and art history, where I was an educator first, then a Trader Joe's sign artist, and then began my career in UX UI, where my interests lie largely on the UX research and design component, where I kind of lean into sort of my conceptual skills and trying to understand problems and figure out the best way. And then because of my art background, I enjoy the UI component and sort of the design skills that you need for UI. And so those sort of overlap and translate. So I'm enjoying it.
Good. Well, and then for everyone watching this recording, a little disclaimer that there might be dogs in the background of my screen as well as Meg's screen. And it's almost time for school to be let out. So there might be, oh, there's one.
We're not there.
There might be some children and noises in the background too. So forgive us for those noises, but we're both at home right now.
It's life.
Yeah. Meg has a few examples to show, and I've given a few examples to show. So Meg, when someone asks for some sort of competitive analysis, they're like, I have this company, we're working on this website, we need to know what else is out there. Like what's like step one, or where do you begin with that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So you're looking for both direct and indirect competitors. You can glean so much in the study of what are similar industries, similar businesses that would be a competitor to the company that you're working for. And sometimes that's real easy to find. And sometimes the very first step is hard because you have to really think, who would those competitors be? Oftentimes, your stakeholder might be able to give them to you, but sometimes they're not. Or sometimes they're launching something brand new. And so there's not really a competitor. So figuring out who you want to study first is the first step. And then you start to dive in. And so I brought in a basic, let me share this with you real quick.
And these are real examples, by the way. These aren't just
So
made up, right?
yeah, so this one is from the Google Coursera, sort of a template they give you. And you can see that, let me scoot it over here. So basically, when you look at this, this is a very formal way to start it. And what's real important is for you as the UX designer to figure out how your brain best works. Because you're about to compile a lot of information. And so this is one way to do it, but there's not necessarily a right way. It's as long as you can get a really good feel of the competitor and a way to document all that information. So you can see here competitor name, and then you might get general information. Do you hear the dog? Is the dog growling? Your first impressions. One of the first things that I always like to do when I go to a website is go, what's the vibe of this website? What is the emotional response? But you can see here, this is having you rated as you go to interactions, to visual design, to content. And you would have both a if they have a app and a web presence, you would look at both of them.
Mm.
So what else?
Okay. And I'm going to share, just for those of you watching, I'm going to share that spreadsheet just as a resource. So if you wanted to use that to take notes and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So examples, do you mind going through like your examples? So when you pitch, or when
Yes.
you're presenting your research,
Yes.
what does that look like and how do you organize it?
Yes. So I also have two other examples. Let me show you another one that was from a case study where I was looking at art museums. And I share this with you just to look at for a moment. There's various ways that you can organize your information because it needs to be able to make sense to you so that you can identify patterns. And like Heather, you just said, you have to collect this information. You have to analyze it, figure out what the patterns are. So for me, all of a sudden, I was really trying to understand strength and weaknesses. And so I went through several art museums studying strengths and weaknesses. Oh, I think I only included two here, but I had probably six of them. But I really wanted to, this is how I was going to hinge my comparison. So as I took all the information, I then put it in a format that would be easy for me then to build my UX design case with the information. But I have another one I want to share. Double checking. Heather, is it sharing Detal now?
No, it's just a museum. If you
Okay, let me go
exit out of it, you can do it
back.
again.
Okay, yeah, let me share this one real quick. So this speaks to what Heather you just asked. So then in this particular case, I am passing this on to Heather, who was the UI design. And so I wanted to think about what would be helpful, what research. This is another project that Heather and I were both working on that I wanted to be able to give her information that would be helpful because I was going to be collecting lots of examples. And so I really wanted to almost in a way design something that would be helpful for her to be able to see and to add a glimpse, get a really good understanding. So that is another important distinction depending on who is going to be receiving the information that you have uncovered. You have just uncovered this great information and you had to figure out how can I tell somebody about it? And then you have to think, well, what is the end goal? What information do they need? And then figuring out how to share that in a way that is accessible, quickly ingestible, so they can understand. So, on this particular case, and what I have been finding that I enjoy the most is almost creating a visual that then you can look at. So, in this particular case, we were really studying colors. And so, I wanted to really highlight colors. I had figured out what things that I wanted to highlight. I often highlight the things that are the strengths of particular websites and not as much the weaknesses, but really what are the things that other companies have learned and are doing a really good job at it so that then can harness that in the arena that my particular company might need. And so here we go. And I kind of I always give a space for notes so that if you're looking at something and something else comes to your mind, that you have an opportunity then to write those notes right there with the particular. Now, this was not any particular setup that someone gave me. I just have been playing with how to create a visual of the results. For another company, what I did was a PowerPoint presentation. So really it's just going to depend on who's receiving the information, then how you present it. So you kind of have to be, it's not about necessarily my particular way. It's about the way that's going to be received the best.
Mhm. And that specific example that she just showed is for Vita Solutions, which they're
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with,
Yeah.
for India market. And so the competitive analysis for the US market, even though it's the exact same product, is going to be totally different because I mean I've never heard of Detol. Is that how you say it, Detol?
Yeah. Well, I'm not actually really sure.
Yeah. So, the competitive analysis for the US market are going to be brands that you're familiar with, like Purell, for example. So, yeah. So the competitive analysis is really just you have to think about the geographic location as well as the target audience, and what kind of products, you know, for Vita specifically, there's different target audiences depending on the product. So that gives, you have to have more competitive analysis examples. And that's just one. Did you do 5 of those for India at least? You may have done more.
I know at least 5. I might have done more because I really wanted to have a really good base for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, especially because we're not familiar with India, or at least I'm not.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
to feel familiar with like what's out there, what they're used to, and could you like talk about some patterns that you found within India and the competitors there?
Yeah. I like to think you really become a student of whatever you're studying. And so the way that you become a student of it is really sort of immersing yourself in it so that it becomes just really familiar to you.
Mhm,
And a couple of things that we noticed is color choice. And as you said, Heather, really realizing that um, this was a different culture. And so not only really looking at companies, you really needed to take time to understand the culture, especially since you were not of that culture.
mhm.
And so really looking at symbols. Um, Looking at symbols. I was going to say you discovered something very interesting about symbols, didn't you? With emojis.
Oh yeah. So India has the most India, out of all countries in the world, uses emojis the most. So, because of that information that I received, we started using emojis on some of the smaller bottles for the scent to represent the scents. So, lemon is the lemon emoji. And then some of them there weren't emojis, so we made our own in the style of an emoji. So that
Yeah.
was that just to make it feel more familiar to that specific target audience.
So I think some of the takeaways that were really important was really understanding the culture and understanding the culture and what symbols and what visuals were important and what colors were important. And
Mhm.
so that you wouldn't all of a sudden use something that would be um, offensive per se, or not even speaking to relevant to your user. And specifically, I think one thing that was interesting was, as a good takeaway for more than just that market, was the power of images and icons so that you, because people tend to scan and not read,
Mhm,
or if it's a place that has many languages. And so the power of that icon
mhm.
and image in your design was
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah, and I've actually never haven't even thought about that. But the country of India is very diverse. Like they always talk about it depends on where you live. There's like
Yeah.
multiple things going on. So maybe possibly the emojis and the icons are kind of like that consistency that they have, and no matter where they are in the country. Um, And then also one thing that Meg, revealed in the competitive analysis, and I'm just talking about color. People are really stuck on color. Like if you change the color of their brand, they're like, "Whoa, what is going on?" It's a big deal. So the Vita people weren't. They didn't really, they're like, if you have some research to back up that we need to use a different color, then they're very open to it. But some people are really stubborn about it. But she revealed that there were a lot of reds specifically, as well as yellows in the competitive analysis. And so we incorporated the style guide that what we inherited. I inherited the style guide for the brand, and it's all blues, like a dark blue and a teal and like a lighter blue. And it was pretty clear even before I got started that we needed some sort of action color, and instead of me just being like, oh, my favorite color is orange, I'm gonna use orange. Like, who cares what Heather likes? That we need some like some clear choices here. Um, then we started using reds in there just subtly, maybe for buttons on the packaging. There's like a little bit of red in the text just to kind of like incorporate more familiar colors for that specific kind of product. So, yeah.
And I think that was really helpful too, as you were trying to make those color decisions. I think what was helpful is with all, like we were talking about, I did multiple companies and also did, since I did institutions too. So I did lots of different entities and then had their color palette. So you could see what consistently showed up to really help guide. And even if I'm going to do a blue, if I'm going to do a red, since there's such variety even in those colors,
Mhm.
what pattern red do I see? What pattern blue or yellow?
Mhm.
It just really made it easy because, like you said, it wasn't about your favorite color. It was,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it makes it. And then when you present your ideas and present your advice, it's very clear this is not something that you just kind of like woke up one morning and decided. It's, like there's some clear data that shows that this is the best choice. And so that's, most people that you present that to, they're like, okay, well, let's do it. Um, so that makes things kind of move along quickly instead of getting stuck on something not, you know, not necessarily important for the project. But and then we don't just evaluate like the visual side, but Meg noticed that there was a huge pattern of the philosophy of trust within each
Mm,
of the sites. That
yes.
there was a lot of language that communicated trust. Like, you can trust us with this product. Like, it's safe. It's not gonna hurt you. So I didn't know if you want to talk about that too.
Yeah, I was going to add to something too that you just said. There's a lot of words you'll hear in UX talking about data driven decisions. And I recently had a colleague say, she changed the word just a little bit and she said data informed decisions.
Mhm.
And so the data informs how you proceed instead of driving everything, because you have both this, qualitative and quantitative analysis, both this, user stories, and then you have these numbers and you're combining them. um, but as we looked in this idea of trust, and it's really interesting because I think sometimes we tap into fundamental aspects of who we are. This idea of trust is a very important thing. And here you have this media that's separated from a real person. And so, how can you convey trust? And as we looked at this specific example, and you looked at a pattern through various companies of word choice, of the icons they used, or endorsements, testimonies, reviews, getting to see where they placed those, if it was on the homepage, if it was in the header or the footer of the web page.
Mhm.
You could see that. And it kind of also, this is why I said one of the first things to do is to kind of go, what's the vibe of this page?
Mhm.
Because immediately when you see a page, you will have some sort of emotional response. And then you go, well, how did they achieve that?
Mhm.
And that was one of the things that happened. I was like, wow, this page, I really feel like I should trust this page. I should trust this company, and I don't know this company. Why do I feel that way?
Yeah.
And then I would break it down and I would look at the words that were used. Or I noticed, oh, look at these testimonies, look in the footer. So all these things were happening to convey that message.
Mhm. Okay. Um, I think that's all the questions I had. Did you want to like close with anything or add anything to the competitive analysis process? One question I thought about asking, I don't know if this is a good one, but Have you ever presented, your data informed decisions,
Yeah.
where like this is clearly what you should do, but the client has been like, nah, I don't want to. Or, it's, I don't know.
Y
Have you ever had that
Yes.
experience?
I have, and, I really think what's important, a couple of things. Um, yeah, I was just talking to a colleague about, I'd label that in, like, conflict, like, I presented and it wasn't, but that's really just an opportunity,
Mm,
and so that opportunity is it's just a miscommunication, so helping to understand, it's kinda like the same idea is did that why did that information not lead to change of that stakeholder?
mm,
And then going, well, let's figure that out. Why? Because then maybe I miscommunicated something, or I failed to explain the value of user experience, because really we're demystifying the user so that the stakeholder can be more successful. So
mhm.
somewhere we missed that opportunity to help that person understand what the value of what we were doing. So yes, it happens, and just as in anything, sometimes my responses have been the other, where I've been given like, "Oh, that's awesome. We know what to do. This you've empowered us."
Uh-huh.
And so it's really it comes down to being a story gatherer
Mhm.
and a storyteller, and then just keeping up that communication.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks, Meg. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Letting
you're
us know
welcome.
what
Thanks,
mistakes
Heather.
might have
Good luck,
happened.
everybody.
Thank you.